right, Sarah, it's all you.
I should have paid better attention. It's 6:03. How do you do this? I don't honestly know, you guys.
Well,
I'd like to officially call the meeting to order.
It sounds like there's a couple well, you can't call it to order until you have a quorum.
Okay.
So let's just hold tight for a few yet. And
Okay.
let a couple have the opportunity to join.
Okay. I'll look up how to start it on the internet.
And then you'll have to take a roll call, and you'll roll call for every vote.
Okay. Roll call for every vote. How are you, Crystal?
I'm good. Sorry, that took me a while to connect. I'm on my phone.
Oh, I call this meeting to order. We have a quorum. All right. I have the script now. What?
Nothing.
Don't make fun of me, Aaron. I don't appreciate that.
You can still call the meeting to order, even though we don't have a quorum right now, but we still have to proceed with the meeting.
Okay. So it's
You just can't take any action.
Right.
Just so you know that.
okay. So it's Thursday, October 15th. The Parks, Recreation, and Senior Services Advisory Board. I'd like to call this meeting to order. So we start with, I have to pull up the agenda. So the first thing on the agenda is, that's a really good question.
Roll call.
Roll call.
Yeah, so you could do, yeah.
We'll get through this, you guys, I promise. So I'd like to start with the members that are present, and you can do so by stating your name or saying aye on the call.
John, do you have the roster there? You would run through it and they would indicate.
You call us and we'll say here.
Okay, say here. I'm taking better notes next time. So Commissioner Macy.
Here.
Crystal Chow.
Here.
Sarah Kinninger. Here. Other members present?
Oh, there we go.
Tim Trukowski.
Tim just joined.
Thank God. Other members present. Tim, are you here? Please indicate by saying here. Nope. We're waiting for.
Right now,
he doesn't have audio yet.
Yep, I see that. Thank you, Carol. Tim, we're doing roll call. Can you say here?
I am here.
Good. Now you can take over the meeting.
My calendar for 7 o'clock. My apologies, everyone.
No worries. So the second thing on our agenda is approval of the minutes.
Well, that would require
quorum. We can't do that.
Correct.
Melody just texted me. She's waiting.
She's here.
No. I texted you that before, remember? And then you said, I texted you and Sarah, and I was like, let me in.
So moving on to city commission comments.
Okay, so it hasn't been so very long since we've met before, but in that time, the city commission has appointed a new city commissioner, Brandon Colo. Also at this last meeting, there was on the consent agenda some Normandy Oaks improvements, including, Aaron can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but grading and doing the drainage and irrigation for a second soccer field at Normandy Oaks, which has been part of phase 2. But because we received money from the county, some matching money, we were able to work that in now, and it seems like a good idea to even have to spend a little money on this now so that we wouldn't have to put the park on hold for construction again next year. So looks like a lot's going to be getting done on that, and I know there's on the agenda later to talk about the event coming up. In addition, at the last meeting, we had there was a attempted presentation. Hopefully, we'll have it at the next one of a memorial garden in honor of Commissioner Kim Gibbs. So the proposal, which is a really lovely design, is for Barton South. Barton South.
That's right.
Which is the one that has the gazebo on it. So they're it incorporates some really nice elements, including some perennials from Commissioner Gibbs' own garden, which she was really invested in. So I think it's a great plan and a nice way to honor her. As part of that discussion, I also had talked to City Manager Paul Brake, and one thing he wanted us to bring to this body was a discussion at some point of how we handle requests for memorial gardens and memorial benches and so on. Like I think in the past we've done it fairly informally, which has mostly worked. He had an experience in Morgantown where someone had asked for a memorial garden, or it wasn't a garden, I don't think, but some other element, and then later was not happy when it got altered based on the city's plans. And so he suggested that maybe Parks and Rec would be the appropriate board to, moving forward, have a discussion and put together some, maybe a draft ordinance on how it would look to request those in the future. So anyway, throwing that on the agenda, and that's all I have. And I don't mean I'm throwing that on this agenda, I just mean like that should be on our plate.
Great, thank you, Commissioner Macy. Next on the agenda is public comment.
There was no public comment called in this evening.
Okay. Those are the minutes. Sorry, Tim. I clearly have not learned anything under your tutelage, so candidates approve the amendment. I don't have a copy of the agenda.
So the next item is
Thank you.
the business item A, which is the skateboard park presentation.
Great. I'm guessing it's what Trevor and Jordan are here for? Or
Yes.
one of
Yes.
the two? Okay, one of the two?
Mostly Jordan.
Hello, everybody.
Okay.
So last meeting, I discussed briefly about potential skate park in the city of Royal Oak. I was dealing with Jordan Zupke over here on the call, and you guys recommended bringing him for the next meeting to present a presentation. So Jordan, turning it over to you.
All right. Good evening, everybody. My name is Jordan Zupke. I'm an attorney. Before being an attorney, I rode skateboards for basically a living, very involved in the local skateboard community throughout Michigan. Have worked at, my first job was at a skateboard shop when I was 15. I've worked in skateboard shops all through law school. And once I graduated, I do primarily criminal defense, and I represent any and all of the skateboard community in various legal issues, predominantly criminal defense issues. So that's kind of an overview of who I am. So skateboarding is very near and dear to my heart. I still do it. I'm often at any of the skate parks in the surrounding areas. And I should also note I have an office at 12 Mile and Crooks. I live in the city of Royal Oak. I am a Royal local by all, I guess, by all stretch of the imagination. So I love the city, and I think that there's something that's missing here, and that's a skateboard park. So I put together a proposal and an overview, which I don't know if it made it to the council members, though I sent it to John Fidel, and I've been speaking with him about this project. The way we were connected was I messaged the city attorney about this because I know him through practicing law. He directed me over to Parks and Rec, and that's kind of how this conversation got started. Mr. Trevor Staples is here. He's a member of the Tony Hawk Foundation. So that's a potential area of funding. I think that maybe there's a few steps before we get to him, but he's here with us tonight, and that's a possible avenue of getting some funding for this project. Hopefully everyone had a chance to review what was sent over, but I guess I can give kind of a brief synopsis of what it is that I think the city should adopt and implement for not just myself, but I think that it's a really, really great community that skate parks offer. I encourage all of the council members to visit the Ferndale Skate Park. that's located in Geary Park in Ferndale. It's an amazing, amazing facility that the Tony Hawk Foundation did a matching grant with. That's an opportunity that we potentially could have through Mr. Staples and Tony Hawk, which is now known as the Skate Park Project. But that's a great, great facility. And if you've ever visited Geary Park prior to the skate park and then visited Geary Park now, it's a different place. There's always at least 50 people who are using the park. It's a very busy skate park. There's a lot of spectators. It's a beautiful, beautiful place. Royal Oak does not have something like that. Now, I will admit Royal Oak does have a very old skate park that is located at the Coolidge and Woodward corridor, but that park is almost never used. It's really not worth using in light of the fact that the ground is deteriorated, the ramps are deteriorated. It really just hasn't been a place that people are drawn to because there's so many other facilities. And right now, more than ever, skateboarding is the biggest it's ever been in probably the world. More skateboard sales are going on, more skate parks are being built. And fortunately for Michigan, there's a lot of money from the Skate Park Foundation that's being put into these cities to build more skate parks. So I'm hopeful the city is open to this idea because I think that it really is a big community builder and it really gives young people a great opportunity to get out of their homes, go hang out at a local park, meet new people, and the culture is just very influential. So there's a lot of positive things that these parks bring, and I'm really hopeful the city's open to doing this sort of project. To kind of go over, I guess, the budgeting ideas, and I'm probably going to invite Trevor Staples to join me on this conversation if he can unmute himself. But
Sure.
I guess ultimately, Mr. Staples, why don't you go over the budget and like what these parks cost and per square footage, and kind of just give this council, introduce yourself, and take it away from here.
So hi, everybody. My name is Trevor Staples. I'm from Ann Arbor and I live in Ann Arbor. I'm the Built to Play skate park manager for the skate park project. And we have partnered with the Ralph C. Wilson Jr. Foundation to develop a series of grants for the region, mostly for underserved areas. So just that's a big caveat here in this whole conversation. But usually members of our staff don't get on meetings like this, especially initial meetings. But since I'm here and this is, my service area is rather small compared to the national service area that the other staff members have, I'm able to do this and help communities with technical assistance, especially on developing public skate parks in their municipalities. So I'm here to help. My email is there. Like I said, I'm in Ann Arbor, so I'm close. So if you do have any in-person meetings or get-togethers at parks or anything, I'm happy to come out and meet you and answer any questions that you might have about public skate parks. As far as budgeting goes, although that's a key factor in any project like this, right? Because we're talking a permanent concrete skate park is what Jordan's looking at. They run about $50 to $60 a square foot. And, so you're looking at, if it's a 10,000 square foot skate park, which is close to what Ferndale's park is, then you're talking around $500,000. So it's a big budget for the skate park. And, I think it's probably premature to get into budgeting. It might be better to have a conversation about the need for the skate park. Any questions that the parks members might have about skate parks or skateboarding, or how the development process works, how the design process works, what would be next. I'm sure Jordan wants to know what's next from your end too. So I guess I'm here to answer any questions about any technical aspects of developing a public skate park.
And just to piggyback what Mr. Staples said, just so I think $50 per square foot, just so kind of there's a ballpark of what a park of the magnitude of doing something like Ferndale costs could be in the realm of anywhere between $250,000 and $500,000. So it's ultimately it's not a small scale project. It's not like putting a tennis court in. It's a much bigger facility, and I think even though it's a little premature just to talk about the numbers, I think the numbers are very important because I'd like the city to know that ultimately what I want to bring is not just a small park. The park that is existing in Royal Oak, I pulled the minutes, and I think that was a $24,000 skate park. So that is a park that's just very few ramps, and the design of the park itself would only accommodate maybe 2 to 3 skaters at a time. Whereas a park like Ferndale could easily accommodate maybe 30 to 40 people at a time. So this is a much bigger draw and something that really is it's a large scale skateboard project. So I just want council, if any of, I don't know if any of your children or you or any of you have skateboarded or familiar with the sport, though I think viewing like what this park is compared to the other ones is an important distinction. And I just kind of want that to be known going into this project, that it's not small scale. So I kind of have spoken a lot about various things. If there's any questions or comment about what we're looking for, I'm happy to help. And I'm sure Mr. Staples is happy to give his advice as well.
Great, thank you. Aaron, did you have something?
Through the chair to Jordan. You had sort of alluded to a sort of a partnership type of idea, or maybe you indicated that you had like seen that play out before. Do you have any examples of that, of how in achieving a project like this, you know, obviously the city would have its part, but what kind of partnership models have you seen, or have you?
Sure. No, I have. And I should note that I viewed this in multiple ways. When I was in high school, the West Bloomfield, or maybe just went on to college, the West Bloomfield skate park was built. That was a fully funded by the city of West Bloomfield skate park. And to do the design process, we had meetings and brought in a lot of local skateboarders, and we all kind of pitched ideas. So that was funded by the city. They took on the job, and that's the Drake Sports Park. Now, the Ferndale skate park was a matching grant. So the city came up with $250,000, and the skate park project matched it. So there was that. Then they had a grand opening, which our law firm did sponsor. We were one of the sponsors. There were various sponsors. Now, where that money went and what that money went to, I really can't confidently tell you. However, there are also other parks like the Farmington Hills Skate Park that did, I mean, that was a longer project. I mean, the city really had to find a lot more money, and they took donations from people, sold bricks. I know Ann Arbor, and Mr. Staples knows a lot more about this project than I do, was $1 million project, and that took years and years to really come to fruition. But yeah, the models.
Why don't I jump in there, because so my personal experience with developing skate parks, which led me to where I am now, helping other people do it, is I was like Jordan, but in Ann Arbor in 2007. So I was the lead advocate for Ann Arbor's skate park, and one of the things we did here was created a community group that eventually became a nonprofit, and it's still there now, the Friends of the Ann Arbor Skate Park. And we helped with fundraising and advocacy throughout the project, as well as expertise in how to do a successful skate park and a quality skate park. Now, we didn't have funding. You know, 2007 was a bad time to start $1 million project. Fundraising for $1 million project. It did take us until grand opening 2014, but we did it with a mix of state, county, and local grants, as well as grassroots fundraising from community members, all the way down to, you know, kids having bake sales. So there's a bunch of different ways to do it, and the projects that are most successful do have those community group aspects to it, even if they're not bringing a lot of funding in. Ypsilanti Township just opened their skate park just a couple weeks ago. The county parks, Washtenaw County Parks, met the match for that, but to make that happen successfully, there was a community group of skaters who were involved in finding the location of the skate park, the design of the skate park, who was going to design and build the skate park, and some fundraising too. So pretty much every skate park, every quality skate park that's been built has had that community group aspect to it. And, you know, a lot of times that's helpful because most municipal leaders haven't developed a public skate park before, or they've done like the ramp setup that you have, which a lot of communities are now replacing because although they were cheap in the beginning, it didn't take long before they started to get run down and unsafe and people started to not use them anymore. So one of the things with the cost of these concrete skate parks is that they're permanent and super low maintenance. You know, we're talking a couple $1,000s of maintenance a year versus what might need to be done to metal and plastic and wooden ramps. So yeah, so that back to that community aspect, you know, the Riverside Skate Park that just got built in downtown Detroit, that was Community Push as a local nonprofit that was involved in helping get that going and help the city make that successful. So yeah, I mean, every project has that community aspect. And what's nice is, you know, I like to see people like Jordan coming and bringing something, you know, saying, I want to help do this. You know, it's not, I've gone to a lot of city council meetings, and a lot of parks meetings, and most people are coming to complain about stuff. And so it's great to have something positive going on. So I'll take it back to you, Jordan.
And I just would like to add that Community Push is a nonprofit that some of my friends started in Detroit. It's been a huge, huge motivating factor to get parks built in Detroit. And they also do consulting for other communities. So that's a connection that I have. And one of the founding members, whose name is Derek Dykes, knows about this project. He's the one that connected me with Trevor Staples. He's given me a lot of very helpful information. And the cities, if you look at the proposal I sent over, Exhibit A is the Ferndale Skate Park budget, as well as the budget for the Ypsilanti Skate Park as well. So that information was just forwarded over to me by asking. So I tried to put as much as I could in that and make it a very helpful document. So hopefully we answered your question. If there's any other questions, I would love to help you, help us get this project started.
I have a question about, like, currently I see that you have 200 likes on your Facebook and that's coming in more. Do we have a sense of how many people in Royal Oak specifically are interested in a park like this?
That's a great question. I think that it's hard to put a number. I think the page is up to almost 400. It gets a lot of likes. So and where those people are coming from, I'd have to really like dig into the data to understand it. But what I've also noticed is that when communities build parks, there are a lot more local people who start using them. So they hear about the park, they become interested, they want to go to the local skate shop. Now, there is Modern Skate and Surf, which is an indoor park and an amazing facility that's an indoor place that's located on the border of Madison Heights and Royal Oak. So we have a local skate shop that's right in our backyard. That's an amazing place.
And we have a tool called the skate park adoption model that basically is a formula that uses census data. That can show sort of a percentage for your population of how many people are, you know, casual skaters and then everyday skaters. So I can work with Jordan offline and we can play with some of those numbers and get something to do on that too.
I mean, let's fast forward. I guess just understanding like the size that would ideally be recommended to accommodate the population, I guess, is kind of at least where my head was. I don't necessarily know where we're headed with this, and we clearly can't, on this call, you've heard we can't make decisions, but just understanding, like, starting to think about parks, because the minute we talk skate park, we're putting in cement, and now we're taking away green. And so, like, I guess there's a balance there, right? Like, as a community, we tend to really value our green. And I'm not saying good, bad. I'm just throwing out there that those are the things that I'm trying to think through as a member of this board.
And one thing we've done with our most recent grants is and again, there's the potential for Royal Oak to get one of these grants, but mostly they're for underserved areas. But that can mean a lot of things, so we can talk about that later. But we have a component that's an environmental impact award that's additional grant funding to help with environmental features and practices to lessen the footprint of the skate park.
Okay.
A lot of times it starts with stormwater management. At the Ann Arbor Skate Park, the runoff is actually less now after 20,000 square feet of concrete was poured because of how the water is managed with the bioswales and the retention and all that. So there are ways to, although a lot of skate parks are just a rectangular slab, there are ways to incorporate it into a green space to make it fit. And not be just a loss of green space. Depending on how many parks you have too. Here in Ann Arbor, we have 200 parks or something. So it might not be like that in Royal Oak.
We have 50 plus, I think, right, Aaron?
50 scenic parks with over 310 acres of natural
go.
woodland, according to the website. That's page 1 of the proposal.
Clearly I'm skimming it as we're reading this. Trevor, I guess I'd like to go back and then certainly want to hear from the rest of the members. Understanding, I can already hear that, this is a want from one community, but then there's going to be the flip side of we're putting most of our parks are neighborhood parks. And so what are some of the common things that you've heard, in the complaint department, just so we can understand what that might look like so that we can feel confident in how we're approaching this?
Yeah, some of the things are what you've heard before. Why can't we spend that money on the potholes, things like that, right? So what money is being used for and why should we use it for a skate park? That's where that data comes in, where here's how many kids are going to use this skate park. That's where hopefully eventually we'll be allowed to have events again. What really helps projects is having, skate park supporters come out to meetings and show that support so you can see it. So one thing is just having the support and why money for this. There's a lot of misconceptions. So noise is a misconception, right?
Okay.
So the ramps and rails and boxes and things like that are made out of wood and plastic and metal, those are basically speakers, right? They're built just like speakers. So when you bang on them, they make a loud noise, whereas concrete isn't like that. And although when you hear a skate park rattling or a skateboard rattling down the sidewalk, it's going ka-tat, 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 ka-tat. Skate parks are built where there's no seams like that. So it's really quiet, way quieter than like a softball game going on. So noise is an issue that people bring up. People will say, you'll have people say instantly that drugs are going to suddenly show up and bullies and gangs, and there's going to be violence and kids are going to be, uncomfortable there. But with a quality design and a well-built skate park, what you'll find is families come there. And, I'm 53 and I started skating in the 80s and I still skate with my daughter. And so this is a time that we live in where whole families are skating together. And so it's people think it's going to be a bunch of troublemakers, and that is mostly due to the fact that previous skate parks were often also pushed back in the back somewhere, like, oh, there's going to be trouble, so we should push it back in the back. But what we encourage people to do is put it out in a really visible place, and then that trouble doesn't come. It's just like if you put a tennis court way back in the back corner, probably not a lot of tennis going on there, but other things are going on there. So yeah, there's some misconceptions, and then there's things that just need to be hashed out, like how many people are going to use the skate park and why should we spend this money on it.
Thank you very much.
If I may, I don't know if any of the other, Commissioner, sorry, I didn't want to take up your time there. I have a question if we could circle back before you guys are done.
You can do yours. You go ahead, Aaron.
Okay, well, then, thanks, Melanie. Just, you mentioned earlier about how there's no seams in it, in the concrete. So to that point, then, in the event that a repair is needed, how extensive would it be to replace concrete if, as built, there's no seams
Mhm.
and you need to, fix something later?
So there are seams, they're just, you don't notice them. So
Okay.
it's built in sections,
Got it.
but there's, the criteria has to be for skateboard wheels to go over without getting stuck or bumped.
Okay.
But the concrete that's used is like 9,000 PSI. So it's super hard concrete. It's not like streets or sidewalks. It's way more durable and way harder. Just to use my park as an example, we've been open, this is our 6th summer. Last year we had the first real bit of maintenance done, and that was for a few chips, a few of the seams that opened up a little bit from water getting in there, little cracks. Some of the coping, so the edge of the bowls is sometimes made out of concrete like a real pool. That's a feature that skateboarders like, and so some of that was repaired. All in all, it was $15,000 worth of repairs and maintenance. And that was for 5 years of, hundreds of people using the skate park every day.
Okay. And then, if you don't mind, I have one more question. Have you seen any examples, and this I guess would go to either Jordan or Trevor here. Have you seen any examples where it's more like a revenue model or a membership model where communities have that and maintain maintenance? I mean, I guess, is there a demand if you build a park that's, has sufficiently desirable to people, will they pay something to use it regularly to help offset potential maintenance longer term?
If I may, I see where you're going. My hope is that it's an open to the public model. There really doesn't exist anything other than private skate parks that are in public spaces. The indoor parks that charge money it's a tough business model to keep up. I think Landslide is a park that was in Clinton Township closed. There's less and less of the indoor parks that are even staying open. But I would be hopeful that the park itself, that if we did something that Trevor was talking about a nonprofit that was going to hopefully help be an advocate for the park, and even after it's built, continue along. I think Ann Arbor does a yearly contest at the park that has local sponsors, continuing people buying bricks outside the park that line it up with their names on it. I think there are ways to generate money, though ultimately I think it'd be a tougher, if we want something open to the community and if we are seeking grants for lower income, it would probably not, and Trevor can correct me if I'm wrong, be a, I guess, for-profit model. In the same way that tennis courts and basketball courts aren't for-profit models.
Yeah, and I wouldn't suggest to make a profit on it. I guess just to offset some of the costs, and then
Right.
to, just
If
to
I could
make
add
that-
something else to that. So a couple things to keep in mind. One that's super important is, and Jordan, you can do some research on this afterwards too, but the liability aspects, if it's free to use and skate at your own risk, the liability basically goes away. The city's liability. As soon as you are charging people, then you have to have people making sure that they're following the rules, wearing their safety equipment, making sure they pay. And then it becomes, the liability becomes on the city once there's those requirements. So then that goes with requirements to wear safety equipment too. It's totally backwards, right? So if you require people to wear helmets and someone doesn't wear their helmet and gets hurt, the city is liable. If you don't require helmets, but you suggest that it's the right thing to do and someone gets hurt, then it's used at your own risk. So once you're charging people to use it, so one thing is the liability starts to go up because you have someone supervising it, basically. It has to be fenced in. It has to be, you have to have people working there, and that costs money. So there's those aspects of it. The other aspect is most young people who skate every day. And I would suggest that even if it costs $1 a day to skate, that's pretty pricey to do something that you could really go to other communities or go street skate and do it for free. So having a safe place to skate that's free rather than the loading dock behind, you know, downtown or whatever is something that's super valuable.
Yeah, and I asked just because, you know, I think with a park, it's accessible to absolutely everybody for any number of purposes. And when you spend a lot of taxpayer dollars on something like this, that, let's face it, is tailored to a somewhat narrow slice of the population. That sort of thing comes into consideration. So,
and things can be done, like when people have events or contests at the skate park, that money goes to the maintenance for the skate park. So things like that can be done too. There are plans that can be worked out with, because there's always going to be, as soon as the skate park is built, people are going to want to have events there, whether it's just social events with music and skateboarding or actual tournaments and contests and things like that. So those are ways to generate, I mean, it would kind of be donations, but it's a way to generate funding for the maintenance, which again is just a couple $1,000s a year. And Jordan and I can work on, if you want, we can give you some contacts of some different municipalities who have skate parks and get some information about how much the maintenance costs for those similar skate parks.
that would be helpful. Thank you.
Commissioner Macy?
Okay, I have a few questions, so don't go off me. So my family's not skaters, but it's true that a lot of their friends are. I actually was surprised. I felt like it's definitely having a resurgence. I'm seeing it, and it's exactly what you said. They're doing it with their parents, which is cool. And I see them like in the school playgrounds and all over. So I know there is demand for this. And I know one thing that I feel like our parks don't do well is cater to the tween and teen group. We have a lot of play structures. We have a lot of open ball fields, which of course are, you know, available to everyone. But I have thought something like this would be really useful. But the price tag is really big. And so I wanted to dive into that a little bit more. I mean, you sort of joked like it's not cheap like a tennis court, but we can't even get them to make a tennis court. So what would be a worthwhile size of this? Like the Memorial Park one, which is only $25,000, and we agree is not well maintained and is quite small. But versus like a $500,000 one that seems like it's both big in terms of footprint and in terms of, even if we had a matching grant, which seems unlikely, putting together $250,000 is still a big ask. So I get that your dream is for the $500,000 one. What do you think would be a reasonable smallest size that we could look at?
Trevor, I'm gonna turn that question over.
Okay, I'll take that.
Yeah, please.
So there's a couple ideas. So like I said, there is funding available definitely at the state level. You all have probably applied for Natural Resources Trust Fund grants before, or maybe you know of those.
Yeah.
The DNR grants, or maybe not. Okay. So those are up to $300,000, and Port Huron got one of those for their skate park. We got one for our skate park. So that's a big source of funding for parks and green areas. So there's grants available out there that are big, that'll take big chunks of it. As far as the size, there's a couple things that can be done. You know, a skate spot, we call it just a, you know, couple thousand square feet. That's maybe similar to what you have now, but made out of concrete. That's going to be more permanent and maybe has features that are more to the skaters' likings. And that's something that can be done for a lower cost, and that allows young people to be able to get to skate in a safe place on those days when they're not going to the big skate park downtown Detroit, or ride at Sculpture Park, or wherever they might go, you know, to get a ride there, you know, if they can't get a ride to the skate park every day, the main skate park. So a smaller one is definitely, you know, we call those skate spots or skate dots if they get really small. But basically the corner of a park that maybe has some features that are skatable and skateboarding is allowed there. So that's something to consider. Another thing to consider is that designs can sometimes be done in phases. So you could design a larger park, and, you know, if it were a 10,000 square foot skate park, maybe half of it is done first, and then, you know, the city wants to see, well, how popular is it, and are people really going to use it before we spend any more money on it? Or even smaller, it could be done a couple thousand square feet at a time. Rochester, New York is building their first phase. Their first phase is about 11,000 or 12,000 square feet, and then they have 6,000 more that they're going to do later when the funding comes in later to do the rest. So that's an idea to sort of a phased design. One problem with phased designs can sometimes be that the community sees that there's a skate park and doesn't see why more money needs to be spent on a skate park because there's already a skate park there. But usually, I mean, any quality skate park that gets built pretty much anywhere is so busy that everyone in the community, when they drive by, they see that there's always people using the skate park. So, you know, again, in my personal experience, people fought this thing. You know, it took us a really long time to convince people it was a good idea. Now that it's built, people just, I mean, it's on a really busy corner. So I get people telling me all the time, wow, the skate park's busy all the time. So, you know, yes, it is a hard sell, but the payoff in the end is usually pretty good. But yeah, smaller parks can work. And actually,
Okay,
Detroit is doing one of those. The WIG was a DIY skate park in downtown Detroit. And a development went up, and the city required the developer to build a park in the middle of the development. And they're taking a corner of that, about 3,000 square feet to do, you know, there's a track around the park, and there's a pavilion, and there's trees and things like that, and a basketball court, and they're putting a little skate spot in the corner of that too. So that's going to be an example of how that can be done to a smaller skate spot.
Okay, that's helpful. And also the information about the phasing idea, which that's helpful too. So there's a park I've had my eye on thinking about, a skate park. I'm just wondering if you have looked at the parks in Royal Oak and had one in mind or had an area in mind.
Yes, and if I may, and I've spoken to John about this. He proposed to me Red Run Park because there may be potentially some renovation that needed to be done there. And
So tennis courts, we can't get them paid for.
well, maybe more people would come out to support the skate park idea. I don't know. But Red Run Park would be a very similarly situated as the Ann Arbor Park. Very big, wide open. There's the disc golf course there now. That would be a great place because you could put the park either in the middle, on the outskirts. But I've always looked at that park. There's the one that's at 11 in Campbell, and forgive me, I think it's the Bassett Park.
That's the one I had my eye on.
Yes.
Didn't we just put money in that? Didn't we just upgrade it?
You upgraded
We did,
the
but it hasn't been
playground
done yet.
equipment. You upgraded the
Oh.
playground equipment, but there's
Okay.
some new planted trees also over there as well.
Yeah, we did just plant trees. But the playground is not in yet.
No.
And just to, I guess, put one of the caveats of if we were to aim for the skate park project to be I guess a partner in this project, their requirement is that it serve, I guess, a lower income community than probably Royal Oak is going to qualify for. The exception to that rule would be if it's in close enough proximity to another municipality that is considered lower or median, has a lower median income. So if we can put in the grant that there's available transportation, travel from, let's say, Madison Heights, I've already kind of started putting together ideas for how can we get young people from Madison Heights to Red Run, which is 3 miles. Now, fortunately for the Royal Oak and Woodward corridor, there's a lot of opportunity for travel, but that is something to consider if we are to consider, can we get a matching grant from the Skate Park Foundation, which I will also say has a lot of draw because then Tony Hawk's name gets put into the pot, and often that in and of itself seems to be a huge conversation piece, and it generates a lot of news within the skateboard community. So that was always I guess if we're looking for money, that's certainly a consideration. And I think Bassett and Red Run accommodate that consideration.
So do they look at the city as a whole in there? Because, for example, Royal Oak is like split into a lot of smaller blocks, and we get federal funding from the Community Development Block Grant Program that is focused only on the neighborhoods that have a lower median income, maybe than some of the other ones. So do they only look at Royal Oak as a whole, or could we try to target some of these neighborhoods that are in the lower income or the CDBG areas?
That's what you would need to do to qualify for one of our grants. So what you would need to do is, so we used to just use median household income, and we would sometimes go down to the census tract to be able to target that, because sometimes, like you said, a community at large looks like it's higher income, but like Wyandotte, it's half over MHI and half below MHI. So what you would need to do through the grant application process is show proof that it would be accessible to these underserved communities or neighborhoods in whatever way you can.
So I guess it's another option. John, could you use CDBG grant money for this to help supplement?
No.
Okay.
The reason why you can't is because with CDBG money, you have to show that you are going to be using similar components in other CDBG parks.
Okay.
This is pretty much like a
Standalone.
one-time thing,
Yep. Okay.
Well,
Thank
you can
you.
always build a skate park in every park.
We could. That would be amazing. You're not getting the dog park, just so you know.
We won't ever take away dogs.
Okay.
That's a tough sell.
That would be a really
Our
tough
dog
sell.
park here took 10 years.
Oh. I can tell you there might be some people who'd like to get rid of it, but we're not getting rid of the dogs. All right. It looks like Commissioner
I saw
Macy.
more.
I know. I figured that much.
And in fact, you brought me to one of the things that's on my list farther down, is that to refer them to you, because we have a dog park here that has a Friends of the Dog Park group that is quite active and does a lot of the upkeep and maintenance and works with, I think, the city very well. In other words, like, being cooperative when necessary and pushing a little harder when necessary. And Sarah are you the president, or I'm not sure in that group, but heavily involved, and so she could be someone to talk to if you're thinking about forming a similar group. So did want to mention that, and since it came up.
That's a great idea.
And just we do have a membership too, so we pay $40 a year to use that. So I can see where Aaron's coming and where it doesn't become a barrier to use it, Trevor, but it could help offset. I'm not saying that's the right model. I'm just throwing out there that is something that we do pay for the dog park to help with offset the cost of poop service, I'm guessing.
Right.
Okay.
I also wanted to ask, this is maybe a grant idea or maybe just a beautification idea, but is it possible to paint these parks and to have it, instead of concrete, but be painted concrete? And if so, could we seek out an art grant to do that as well? I'm just seeing, when I think of, the pictures shown, and most of these skate parks are just like the gray concrete, which are, fine. But it seems like there is the opportunity with all the movement and shapes to create some neat art there too. I didn't know if that would ruin the effect or something.
There's a couple things done.
Go ahead. I was
Okay.
going to say, if painting the park encourages graffiti, because there is a park in Hamtramck that's like an open graffiti space. You can paint there. I've represented the skate park when the city came after them for a blight violation, arguing that they were promoting graffiti. However, as that case was dismissed because it was deemed art. I think that if a big mural would bring in dollars and cents, I don't think anybody would have an objection to bringing in money through any means necessary to get a place built. But my only concern would be, does it encourage people to then think oh, we can spray paint here? Because if you encourage it, I can rest assured they will come.
Well, maybe we could build a graffiti wall next to it that they could get their art out on.
I think that's a great idea, and the foundation of like what Venice Skate Park was built on, and is still to this day like a huge collective for acceptable graffiti. Trevor, it sounds like you have some thoughts on it, so I'll hand it over to you.
So there are artistic components that can be incorporated into skate parks. Painting the concrete isn't usually a good option because it changes the surface, so it makes it slick. But colored concrete is something that can be done. We have that a little bit here at our park. I think at Riverside in Detroit, what they did was they darkened the color of the concrete a little bit, so it's not that stark white concrete, which helps a little bit on the eyes and makes it look a little more natural. Another option is to incorporate skatable sculptures into the park. You know, what we often come into when we talk to designers and builders about incorporating art into a skate park, their response is usually, well, this is art. You know, their designs are artistic, you know, to them. So it's kind of a hard thing to do, where if you were thinking of like, oh, we can get this sculptor to come in and do some skatable features that aren't necessarily bowls or ramps or things like that. But then again, and Jordan can bring you some of these things later, there are lots of skate parks that have done really interesting, unique skatable features that, you know, not only are they beautiful, but you look at the pictures and you know what skate park it is, right? You know that that skatable structure is that skate park. So there are ways to do it, and different designers are going to be feel different about it. So there's some designers that will be like, oh yeah, we'll do all kinds of weird stuff and it'll look really cool in this corner of the park or whatever. Now, how that goes with art funding, that's going to be challenging too, right? Because is it a skate park or is it art? And if it's incorporated in, that can be both. But sometimes the art people, like the skate park people, they feel like their own thing is their own, you know, their own world. And you know, if you can get two groups to incorporate that together, that's great. You know, I don't know if you know of the Library Street Collective in Detroit, but they're working on developing a skate park, and they are actually hiring a sculptor who's going to work with the designer to make it art, right? And they're considering it functional art. Now, how funders are going to feel about that?
That's
you know,
interesting.
that's the hard sell.
Okay, that's good. It's food for thought. I think those are all my questions.
Tim, hold on. Crystal had her hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You can go, Tim. That's fine.
No, go ahead, Crystal.
You're good. Are you sure?
Yes, positive.
Okay. Just a couple things. I like the idea of the skate spot and phasing as options if it is too expensive and too much of an endeavor to do something at $500,000. And along with that, I like the idea of a sculpture garden, especially if we do something where we combine both like a skate spot being with the phase, like the first phase, if we do like a combination of a park with a skate spot. That way, if there's like families that want to watch their children while they're skating, they can walk around into the sculpture garden and there's like a path to them and then hang out. A couple things about your partnerships with some of the other communities in the area that have built skate parks. I would love to know what the best practices are from those developments, and also lessons learned that we can take, things that we can avoid in Royal Oak, from projects like Gary Park and Detroit. The one in Detroit, they found them great, and I've driven by Gary, and it's like it's, you know, used quite a bit. I'm curious, you know, what they've done from the perspective of the city versus the builder. The builder might not have the same concerns as us. I'm curious what issues they've encountered. I don't know if you can be able to find partners in those other governments in terms of budget too, to supply to Aaron and John if they're asking about routine maintenance and the cost of that. That'd be nice if you would be able facilitate, and any information that they want, in terms of that. I don't know if that helps you, Erin and John, just to see what those other communities.
Yeah, we have, I do have some curiosity about that, and I have a pretty good network of folks locally, and I can reach out to them. You broke up a little bit when you were talking, Crystal. Were you referencing getting some ideas of the maintenance costs? Is that what I understood?
Yeah, and I think that you addressed that earlier too. And also to do with the liability, you said that there won't be liability if we don't have membership cover. And I would be curious what the attorney has to say about liability, because if that might affect our premiums as a city, if we have like an artificial surface, even if, we have to reasonably maintain it, right? If it's with the concrete.
Regardless of membership, you're saying, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's from what I understand, it's the same liability as if you have a bike path along the river. Someone's not out there making sure people wear helmets, but there's a big sign that says you should wear a helmet.
Right.
But yeah, the city attorney is a good person to talk to. And I know at the city of Ann Arbor, the city attorney worked on ours. The city attorney worked on ours the whole way, and the agreement we have with the city and all the way through. So that'd be a good person to talk to. Megan Bonfilio at Washtenaw County Parks. I don't know if anyone knows her, but I can connect you with her. They just built their skate park. So they went through the whole process of meeting with the lawyers and figuring out what the liability is going to be. And then Lorena Wheeler in Ferndale, she'd be the one to talk to at the parks there. So if you need those, my email's right here. If you want to send me an email, I can send you contacts to people to get more information about the liability and just how it went overall, right? Yeah. Now, these parks that I mentioned, they're part of our Built to Play program. So they got a matching grant of $250,000. So it went a little bit smoother than it does when you don't have that giant chunk to start with, right? But they can definitely give you some of the pluses and minuses of doing it. And they're proud of their skate parks, so that they love to talk about the skate park.
And just
Yeah.
sorry,
ahead.
Just a piece of education too about the liability aspect. I don't view a skate park as, and I'm sure Trevor will second this. Skate parks are not any more dangerous than like a basketball court or a baseball field are, because there's an assumption of risk when you walk into them. So unless the park itself is like grossly negligent, like a completely like ridiculously unsafe piece of equipment, there is not really a liability, because there's going to be a sign that says skate within your own risk. The park is going to have been designed by a top-notch building company that is building a facility that you would see replicated in other places. It's not going to be like some foreign thing that's like jump over a bunch of spikes as like an extreme example, or like a loop of fire. It's a very, very repeated kind of pattern in ramps and structure. So from a liability standpoint, there really isn't any. And unlike basketball courts and baseball fields, the whole point is not to never collide with anybody, and it's very less contact. I think statistically, I've looked up that there are less injuries on skateboards than there are on basketball courts and baseball fields. That caveat being there might be more people playing baseball and basketball, but I would also say that the skateboarding gets a bad rap for being this very dangerous thing, where it's really not there aren't a lot of injuries on a day-to-day basis at a skate park that can't be walked off in any way that football, baseball, anything like that. So from a liability standpoint, fairly low, absent gross negligence.
Okay, and then just two things real quick. I'm kind of all over the place, but one, Melanie, with Commissioner Macy, with your idea of like incorporating art, which I love. I don't know if there's any way that we can even partner with OpenCC, which is in Royal Oak, or Cranbrook, or CCS, or any art school in the area to, like, I mean, instead of just like, procuring a sculptor, if we had a contest among the schools, or it was sort of like a senior project, if there's opportunities to collaborate, that'd be I don't know if that's like easy to facilitate, Erin and John, but that might be like free art for the city. And then the other thing was eligibility of Bassett Park, because it is near Madison Heights. Is it eligible for Tony Hawk funding as it stands now, or would we have to do something to make it eligible?
You would have to work to show that somehow you're serving an underserved community. And that's a huge, like, we're opening this up to the interpretation of the community. So sometimes there's a park built where, you know, a half a mile away, it may be a higher income place, but a half a mile away, there's a low income apartment complex that may be the most impacted in the county or something like that, you know? So even though the rest of the census tract and the rest of the area around may be higher income, the skate park is going to serve this smaller area of folks who need this kind of free recreation. Our grants do require that it's free to use and that it's open all the time. We encourage it to not be fenced. You know, one of the things that keeps people from using skate parks or keeps families from feeling comfortable about using skate parks is a giant fence around it, like it's some dangerous place to go into. So as far as you know, qualifying for our grants, either a national grant, which are smaller, or the Built to Play grants, which are larger, matching grants, we'd have to work some things out and see where the park was going to be located and how it serves those underserved communities, whatever that means for your community.
Thank you.
And I know that's sort of a vague answer, but we want to be able to make it work for many communities, and every community is different, and we don't necessarily know every community. So what we don't want to do is just what we've done in the past is say, just use MHI as the line, you know, because there may be communities that are slightly higher or higher than MHI that do have communities or neighborhoods within it that are underserved that need these resources.
Great. Tim?
My question, Crystal covered actually a lot of my questions. We did qualify for CBDG money for Bassett Park, correct?
Yes.
No, we did not.
I thought we did, John. You're on mute, so I can't hear you.
No, Bassett Park is not a CDBG.
Oh, okay.
Okay. And Mr. Zuki, you mentioned Bassett Park as its proximity to Madison Heights. Red Run actually might be closer to the city border of Madison Heights.
Red Run is, I believe. That is correct. If I said that was the other proposed location that John and I had discussed just in speaking about this project, I think Red Run is an amazing, amazing location for something like this. I really love the idea of a park being there because it's such a beautiful place to just be in general. And I think it has the look of a park like Ann Arbor that's tucked away in a very nice park that offers other attractions for full families to come. Playground, the disc golf course. I love it as a location. And it doesn't hurt that it's in close proximity to my office, but that's not the reason. I walk there, I enjoy it as a park. And when I was there when I dreamt up, why is there not a bigger skate park in Royal Oak? That was kind of like the idea in my head was it should be tucked in something like that. So you are correct, Tim. I think it is closer to Madison Heights, though it sounds like there are other avenues of showing how disproportionately affected income areas can benefit. And I think that we can meet that hurdle regardless of where we put this facility.
Definitely. Thank you.
Anything else, Tim?
No, would you like me to take over the agenda?
No, I have a question, but yes, I would absolutely love for you to take over the agenda because I'm failing miserably. I will take notes next time so I can do this when I need to. When you say open all the time, is that just following our park guidelines,
Yeah,
Trevor?
parks hours.
Yes.
Just so it's not, it's closed during school hours,
Sure.
or it's closed,
Okay.
In the winter. People skate all through the winter, even
Sure.
even if there's snow, shoveling it off. So
Okay.
just accessible all the time as park hours.
And then I guess the other question I have is moving forward, like when we look at Red Run, is there room, like, is that going to impact the disc space? Like, it seems like a fairly large footprint thing, but I don't really know. Like, I guess I defer to John and Aaron. Like, are we going to be able to, are they going to coexist, I guess is where I'm at.
Yeah, I guess if we get to that stage, and at any point in the future, let's say
Yeah.
we do, that would always be assessed, and there's creative ways to do that. So I guess
Okay.
off the top of my head, I can't say certainly yes, that would or would not fit in a particular spot, but we'd make it work should we get to that point.
Okay, perfect.
Sarah, the area where I would put the skate park is where the current tennis courts are.
Okay.
So there wouldn't be any problems with the coexistence of the
Got it.
other aspects of the park: playground, ball fields, soccer fields, etc. It's kind of.
I don't think that Red Run's that big, but I guess I'll have to drive by again. Okay, cool. I just wanted to make sure that, like, because I know the disc part of it is a fairly popular thing.
Mm-hmm. And one last, Trevor, you had mentioned to me, and I think it's important. Are these grants going to be available in the future? Is there any current deadlines? Where is that?
Well, I got bad news for you. So we're the first round of these Built to Play grants. The next application window starts in December and ends in January. And that's our last round of these first set of grants. So that's a pretty short timeline if you're going to apply for one of these grants. We are probably going to have a version 2 of these grants. We haven't designed what that's going to look like yet, though. So the next application round is mid-December. Opens mid-December and goes through mid-January, the application window. And if you go to the skate park project website, skatepark.org, you can see there's an application document on there, a worksheet that's exactly like the application once you do the application. So it's just a Word document, and that can show you what the application is going to ask for and look for.
And as just for the council, just so everybody knows, I will dedicate my firm and resources I have to writing the grant and assisting in any way, shape, or form if we wanted to try and fit this in their last round of December, January grants. Just so everyone is aware, if this is something that's voted on, if we can get the money, allocate the money, I'm happy to assist in the grant writing.
And if the skate park is next to the disc golf course, that's great. I don't know if you can see that I have discs on my wall also.
I noticed.
So I'm an avid disc golfer, so I'll be out there using both.
I saw the guitar too. I like it. Mike, I had a question in relation to the application. So some grants require, as part of the application, an obligation on the part of the city. Obviously, you want to pledge funds when you're going, but is there a more stringent obligation on our part if we were to try to rush together an application? I mean, the reason I ask is because this, for sure we would like to at any point apply for money for doing things like this, but we do have a very deliberate process how we engage with the community on these builds, and there has to be a lot bigger discussion about something like this in our city. So it wouldn't be something that we would be able to apply for and commit to so immediately. It would fall into our planning process. And so could you answer anything about the grant itself in terms of that?
So the reason these grants were developed was to help speed up the process for skate park development, because as I mentioned, here in Ann Arbor it took 7 years. Rochester, New York is being built after 14 years of working on it. It typically takes 6 or 7 years from this point that you're at to the grand opening of the skate park. So what we did was develop these grants that are larger grants. They're matching grants though. And then there's also a time frame. So it's a 2-year time frame. So 1 year for fundraising to meet the match, whatever match that is, up to $250,000, and then a year to build the skate park. So we look at a 2-year window there. When you applied, and it does help if you have some funding, it does help the application for sure. But there have been places, Pontiac just applied, they don't have any funding available, but they have a plan for their fundraising, and so there's a spot for that in the application where you can say where the funds are going to come from, or where you see them coming from, or the plan for raising the funds. And that may be a percentage comes from the city, a percentage comes from the state, a percentage comes from fundraising, or a more detailed plan. So if the funding isn't there right now, with the National Tony Hawk Foundation grants, sorry, the skate park project, we just changed our name. Those require to be further along in the process. But what these build to play grants are for is for helping projects that have most everything in place, ready to go and hit the ground running and get this thing going from start to finish. And when I say most things in place, a location, support from the municipality, and a plan for raising the money to get the match. And community input, so a community group that's going to offer input, because we require that community members, that users of the park are involved. Because when skaters aren't involved, bad skate parks get built. Or salespeople come to the municipality and sell what is sold as a really nice skate park, but it doesn't end up being that.
And the skateboard,
And then to see the details of the grant application, I will look into that a little bit more closely, because if there's we're not potentially obligating ourselves or putting ourselves out there to apply on this. I mean, that could help move things along, and knowing that we have a time frame and the ability to build matching funds, that certainly helps. Should we choose to do something like this? But
yeah, and I'll just say that it might be a challenge to meet that underserved part of the grant, but there's no reason you couldn't, because being from Ann Arbor and knowing Michigan, I've been here a long time, knowing Royal Oak, it can be done, but it's going to take some work. I mean, when you have places like Pontiac applying too,
Mm-hmm.
So.
Sure. Well, I don't have any other questions.
All right, anybody have any other questions at all on the matter? No, I want to thank you, Mr. Zibke and Mr. Staples. And we will move on to new business 6B, which is the senior outreach program.
Let me, if you could, Tim, just to go back, just to really quick, let the guests know. We'll look into this. John and I will reach out to you separately to discuss detail on any of it, or to answer any further questions we might have.
and truthfully, whatever it is you need, grant application, look at it, get a foundation for the grant application started, happy to help. It'd be an honor and a privilege. Thank you for having us. I greatly appreciate that you gave it this much time and energy. I know it's been a while. So, and thank you, Trevor, for jumping in. I'm just now meeting Trevor. Basically, we met briefly once, for jumping in and giving us his expertise in this area. So hopefully we get it done, and all of your children come skateboarding with me and Mr. Staples and Tony Hawk and a million other people. So thank you very much. I suppose I can sign off now.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Take care.
Oh, there's Tim.
I'm still here.
I know. I thought you moved on me.
Okay, moving on to that item 6B, which is the senior outreach program. Is this what was in regard to Commissioner Douglas's email earlier this week?
I think we talked about it last time, Tim, about
I believe it was actually originated
both.
from public comment from Ms. Wagner.
Oh, you could be
Yeah.
correct.
I'm sorry to interrupt, guys.
Nope.
Yeah, so
ahead.
we got that request to add this on here, because that is a common request, and it sort of comes in different forms. We call it senior outreach program. We've heard different iterations of it. Some cities do like a phone bank where they communicate with each other, and setting up some sort of a volunteer structure to support people. And from what I gathered, all the various iterations, whether it was phone calls or letters or whatever it was, it really boiled down to the concern for seniors' mental health. So I know we talked about some of the challenges that we had with using city staff to just sort of unsolicited make calls, or we talked about, well, maybe people would submit loved ones' names to this and you could call and reach out. And then it occurred to us, well, wouldn't they just call their loved one to begin with, right? So I think then what it really boiled down to is that it seems to me the concern is just mental health generally, particularly during these times. And I don't know how well equipped our staff is to do much with that. You would think that, we would certainly like to think of ways to help encourage the group of seniors themselves to sort of support each other. And to the extent that we can do something to help that, help them each other with that and be supportive, we'd love to do that. Or else I'm thinking that this maybe branches into we find people that are in social work that know how to do these things. And the county has some resources, maybe none that are directly applicable to what we're looking for, but maybe we could use that as an opportunity to partner with them and start something new. But that's where I gather it's going, unless specifically we wanted to get back to this phone stuff. I have some concerns with our staff's ability to do that, even at the senior center where we're not open completely right now, contrary to, some thoughts that they're busy, they are working on things, and we could do that. It just raises a bunch of questions. So I guess we open that up to ideas or figure out how we might explore that, or somebody might volunteer to reach out to people in Oakland County and see if we can get some help.
Commissioner Macy?
Yeah, we did talk about this last week. It was part of my laundry list of things that I wanted to discuss after many months of not doing this work, but it's something we've looked into various places, the police, the library workers, the senior center. It's a project that requires a lot of capacity if we're doing what Aaron said, which is to be calling everyone, not just people who opt into the program. And it seems to me that calling all the seniors is what's needed because, as Aaron pointed out, people who are connected enough to know about the program or to be recommended for the program probably don't need that assistance as much as others who don't have that connection. So my memory of where we left it last time was, I think Mike Lipinski was talking about having some of the volunteer groups, like this is something that would be a good match for the Optimist Club. So I was sort of hoping that he was going to come after 7 o'clock tonight. Maybe he missed the time of the meeting change too. Because I do think if we're going to do the phone calling piece of it, it's going to probably require somebody outside of the city to be initiating that. And I don't think that's a terrible thing necessarily, but I really like Aaron's idea about reaching out to Oakland County Health. And this seems like a COVID specific need as well. Like we need it all the time, but we need it twice as much during COVID. So this may be something that Oakland County might have funds to help us with.
I can look at some AARP things. I've been getting quite a bit of emails from them to see if they have any programs too, Aaron, through the the aging in place stuff that we've been working on. I can reach out to them for us. I guess the other idea that I'm looking through our notes is I wonder if there's any opportunity to work with schools like this, like high school students to write. I'm not saying it's as good as calling, but at least start writing letters or cards, and maybe it's part of a project or part of English class. Like I know that teachers are always looking for creative ways to include some of these types of things that they could potentially be part of the program to help also with this. I get that it's a very COVID specific, and just a thought.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how to bridge that gap, but that's an idea I thought that we've talked about last time.
Mm-hmm.
So last meeting, I mentioned that the senior center has partnered with, I believe they're called Love for the Elderly.
Okay.
They get these bundles of letters that, they can hand out to the seniors. So there is something already that's being done, not necessarily phone calls, but it's essentially a bundle of love package.
Sure. Are they handing them out to the seniors that come to the center, or do they go to people that haven't engaged with the center, John?
Well, right now, nobody's going really to the center because it's.
So, I mean, like if I've never been to the senior center, would I get a letter?
I believe so.
Okay. I think that's we're trying to reach a community that isn't necessarily engaged with us. I think that's probably the challenge of all of this, right? Okay, great. That's perfect. Thank you. I appreciate the context.
I think a lot of that seems very focused towards the mental health of the senior, which is obviously super important. But I think maybe part of that, if I remember from our last meeting, was services we could provide to those seniors, whether it be helping them shovel the snow or helping them get the groceries or things like that, things they may not be comfortable doing due to the pandemic or things that they physically can't do.
We talked about groceries too, didn't we?
We did talk about groceries.
Okay.
Like I know a lot of seniors may not have that built into their budget where they can't necessarily have additional costs to the groceries where they would pay for the delivery or the pickup service, that their budgets are so restrictive that they would have to go into the grocery store. If we could maybe get somehow assistance with that, would be, I think, beneficial.
Yeah, we were running limited grocery store trips through the buses. Obviously, we can't pack them onto the bus like we did previously. So that's happening to an extent.
Have we talked to like a Kroger or somebody that offers delivery service and being able to get it at some kind of discount for them? Like, I'm just trying to think reversely, like not, because I appreciate how much the city already has going on. So how can we help supplement while not tapping out city resources? I guess that's where I'm thinking, Aaron.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if we could get, you know, maybe it's $5 a month or something for like Myers to do, you know, maybe they can only use the Myers at 13 Mile, but you know, so they could still put, you know, call in an order, or somebody could drop off a sheet or something. I don't know. I know they're not as connected, so that's also the challenge, that they can't just like go online and order their groceries, but
or
you know,
essentially set up something like a there's a name for the company that does that now and it escapes me, but essentially that,
like Shipped. I mean,
like
we use
Shipt.
Shipped. We use Shipped, and so but I guess we'd have to look at some way to potentially also do it non-technology ways, right? Some of these people are not connected on technology. Like you and I can go on and order our groceries, but
and so
maybe
to that extent, senior center staff and resources could be used well
There.
to help make those connections. If we had
Sure.
a volunteer corps that could do
Okay.
the shopping and the pickup, we certainly could help make those connections. But
that
we
might
have to
be
find who these people are first. But
yeah.
I like that, and we can look at that feasibility for sure.
Crystal.
Sorry. Sarah, at Meyer, I think it's free delivery if you spend over like $35. So again, it's like bridging the gap between the technology and having it at the hands of seniors who might not be able to do that online.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we'd have to check, because I think that's only if you have the membership. So I think like it's $100 to be a member of Shipped for the year. So like that might be cost prohibitive. I don't know. We can dig into it. Just an idea. Those are things I would not want. I'd want to try to help them with the cost of the membership to be able to qualify for that, I guess, is where I was going, Crystal.
Got it. Okay.
Because yes, I think you're right. It is free if you go over a certain amount, but I think that's after you've paid $100 for the year.
Yeah.
Okay. Didn't realize.
Yeah.
So we can look into that. We will explore options on that in preparation for our next meeting. Tell you what we found on some of that. You know, I do want to get back to, so that's still a service thing though. There still is the very specific concern about their mental health or their ability to connect with each other. And I don't know that that's the problem. I hear that that's the problem. So I guess I don't have anything to say I've seen that, but apparently that is the problem. And that I think is the basis of the request to add this item here, is to still very specifically think about that. And so to that end, we have reached out to Oakland County. They have some very specific services that they already offer through many different volunteer organizations, a whole network of them. None of them specifically kind of doing what we're asking for. And I always see this as an opportunity to reach out and see if they have ideas there too, and they just need somebody to partner with to use a facility for, or however we might be able to do that. So in advance of the next meeting too, we'll make a second push to some of those organizations, particularly the county, and see if there's anything else we can, any of their resources that we can harness, I suppose. And we'll bring that back next meeting as well.
Do we know when I know that they have, like Mike has that, he's part of, I think the Optimist or I can't remember which one, but they have like a big like meeting of all of them, right? Like once a month. I wonder if reaching out to them to get on their agenda to ask, like if they have some of those groups, like that might be at least a good place to start to bridge the just manpower
Yeah, that's a really good
Yeah.
idea. And in fact, we will do that. They've been inviting us to their Optimist breakfast that
Oh.
they meet since I've started, and we've been sitting at a time. So
It
that's a
might be
really
time to
good
make an
thought. And that's a
appearance. That like maybe they, and they may also have time, a little
Sure.
bit more time. Like again, a lot of us are working full time, so like, not that I can't reach out after 5 or 6, but there's a lot of hours
But-
that we're missing.
Sarah, I think the group you're talking about is the Interclub Council, which is the Optimist group is part of, and that meets on the first Friday, I think, of the month. I have gone to that in the past, and I think I can go this next month, so I can do that and check in with them.
Cool.
Awesome. Thank you. I couldn't remember the name, so thank you for that.
I think in regards to not having the capacity to physically call up those who request a phone call conversation, I think the importance is to have resources available. So if someone were to call or whatnot, we can say, you know what, AARP has this program. Please give them a call at 1-800, stuff like that.
Which we do currently to a certain degree.
Yeah, but I mean that's important because like I said, calling people, it can be a daunting task, and then you get into this whole, well, I didn't sign up for this. Well, you kind of did, but I didn't, so you also get into that whole aspect. But just providing resources, kind of how we did when this whole COVID thing happened. We didn't really have any sort of virtual programming to begin with, but the Oakland County did, and all these other places had virtual programming, and we said, you know what, we don't have this at this moment, but if you are looking for something for your children to do while they're stuck inside the house, take a look at this website and whatnot. So I think that's also important as well.
Well, I think that what that brings us back to, which kind of is always Ms. Wegman's core foundational thing, is the challenge that we all face in communicating with this group, right? Like a lot of, and I'm not trying to solve it today, but I just think that continues to be a theme, that like, how can we get better at communicating with this group? Because John, you're got a lot of great ideas, but they have to reach out for it. And then we reach out to them, and like, it's a hard puzzle to solve in a city the size of this, but I think that continues, maybe the Insight's a good place to try to continue to push things. I don't know what other resources we have or mediums to communicate with this group outside of technology. And I think that's,
we have a lot. If you think about it, the Insight goes out to pretty much all the addresses in Royal Oak, 33 some odd thousand addresses. So that is our
primary
resources that we have. The Senior Center has a monthly newsletter that can be picked up, or it can also be, I think it could be mailed, not 100% sure on that, but I know the Senior Center has monthly resources of everything that goes on at the center during that month, even though the Insight is quarterly. But there are these resources that are out there.
So yeah, I think, again, I'm not looking to solve it on this call, but I think it's something we got to dive into, because the AARP aging in place thing has been completely stalled, and that's one place to do it. But John, and I appreciate that senior newsletter, but if maybe we have to start sending it to these people. Taking it to the next step and investing in that because I think those are great resources, but they're not picking them up, or they don't come and get them. So some of it's got to be pushed, some of it's got to be pulling. We just need to find out.
There he is, the man himself.
I'm just trying to read the whole thing. Mike Rapinski, FCC, R. Dreyer, I don't know. So I think it's just got to figure out what the balance is, and I don't know if we've hit that sweet spot between the push and pull yet. But I think it just always comes down to that. And maybe some of it's education as well, of where these resources can be found and how they get access to them.
Hi, Mike. Can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you. Sorry, but I was having computer problems, and I'm on my phone. So for some reason, I couldn't find the link to the meeting. It was weird.
Oh.
It was on my end. I'm sorry.
So Mike, go ahead.
Yeah. So I think we need to continue to discuss that, but I agree, we have a lot available to them. It seems to be a lot of lack of education or lack of resources to get it to them. So I think we need to keep digging in there.
And then, but we were talking about, we were going to make a sort of ask of these volunteer groups, including the Optimist Club and others. I think we need to settle on what it is we want to ask them specifically. And I know we have the mental health thing, but I think some of that can be solved with even just making the connection. So what we need to ask for is that we need volunteers that are able-bodied and have vehicles that would be willing to do grocery shopping and deliver them to folks, right? Isn't that the specific ask? Because we keep saying we need ideas or how do we reach out. I think that's what we need people to do, and that would be a great help.
Is this for seniors we're talking about? Yeah, I don't know. The Optimist Club, and I can just speak as a member. Our mission is for kids, for youth. All of our activities, all of our efforts and programs are directed toward youth in the community, whether it's the Boys and Girls, Metro Detroit Youth Club now, and some of our other programs. However, you can ask if you want to. Somebody's going to put something together, send it to me, and I'll forward it to the board of the Optimist Club.
So,
yeah,
Aaron,
sure, Mike, you might have other connections, right, with other service groups.
So maybe,
yeah.
So maybe what we need to land on in this particular meeting, since we don't have a quorum, is what is our specific ask? So when Melanie goes to the inter-club council meeting, really has a call to action, and so maybe that's what we can focus on in this for the next few minutes. Is it groceries? Is it mental health? Is it calls? Like, what do we think would be the most valuable use of these resources that we're being gifted potentially?
One thing about if you were to go to a route where volunteers are dropping off groceries is you probably need to do a background check on them.
Okay.
You can't have random people go into people's houses.
That's true if it's a city program, but if this could be a volunteer, this could be a volunteer program that one of the groups runs themselves, right? Like, and then yes, they should do these background checks, but I'm just saying it wouldn't necessarily run through the city.
Right. True. Yeah.
So where do we, I think, Erin, we all have lots of different areas to attack here, but I think we should pick a focus, right? Is it phone calls? Is it compiling resources? Is it grocery delivery? Is it snow removal service?
I think you might make those connections where when somebody works with somebody, you might actually develop friendships here and then ongoing things where you help people. Because when we're talking mental health, I guess when you boil it all down, this pandemic has made it hard to just connect anyway. And I think on the one hand, it's a very practical thing that you could bring groceries to somebody in need that needs them brought to them. And just the act of doing that makes that connection.
Okay.
And you would be able to tell, that person would be able to tell if this person appeared to be in distress or whatever it might be. Even if they're not qualified social workers, I mean, just you would recognize those things. So I think when I settled on this grocery idea, I mean, I guess that's only because it just covers a lot of those bases, I think. And I think it's a relatively simple ask. We don't need to create all kinds of structures around it to make it happen, I think. I think it's relatively simple.
I think that's great. I just want to make sure we settle on what the ask is before we send people out there. So I didn't realize that was the ask. So I apologize. My fault.
The what? No, I'm sorry. What?
I said I didn't realize that was where we were headed with the ask. So thank you for clarifying.
No, I didn't. that was why I threw it out there as a suggestion.
I like that. Do we now, let's assume we get the volunteers and we have the ask. Do we know who these residents are that we would need to start with? Do we have that information?
No, but I suppose it would be a situation that if we knew that we had the base of people to help us do that, then we would message that out to Royal Oak seniors and say, we can help you. And then they would help. Or their neighbors might say, hey, I know Miss Smith next door. It's not going to be on the computer, but I'll go talk to her about it, I think we can generate it that way.
I think the city does have a list of seniors.
Yeah, I don't know how extensive I don't know how extensive or good the database is, but you're right. Judy Davids, I believe, maintained one at one point in time.
Could we start that focus by updating that list and expanding it? Should that be our first step, possibly?
Yeah, I guess I don't know how they got the information to begin with. It was probably just volunteered information or
The AARP might have some of that information. Like, you might have gotten it from the AARP.
Voter records are public. I mean, the data can probably be really easily mined. Like, they know where I am right now.
Yeah.
I know because
They know where your cat is right now too.
Your cat was wondering where you were so long.
she was mad that I was gone, so she couldn't tell me so.
Yeah, I think those are great ideas. So it sounds like that's the ask then, Aaron.
Yeah, and I think let's let that be the standard thing, that when we talk with these groups that have volunteers that want to do service things, that we stick to that and we find out, because it might be from multiple groups. It might not just be that one, but you would find a bunch of them there all at once. And we'll see where that goes. I mean, we can bring it back to the next meeting. Say, no, it was really cold reception. It was hard to get. Then we go on. But I think
it's a starting point. It's at least making forward progress.
Yeah.
Hey, Aaron, I just want to put this on record before I forget, and I will write this in my minutes. But one avenue that I know you and I always talk about is we get all these Eagle Scout projects and these Girl Scout projects. This may be something that, if we get some sort of inquiry about what kind of projects they can do throughout the city, we can pretty much turn this around and say, you know what, this is the type of thing that we are looking at doing. Get you and your troop members together, and we'll provide you maybe, I don't know, a list of 10. I mean, I'm hesitant to say a list of 10 because maybe 8 of those 10 people don't want anything. Then I feel bad for those Boy Scout troops going up there and getting yelled at. I don't know. But I mean, I think that should be an area where we can say, what, these people want to receive a letter. They want to, brownie delivery or something like that. I don't know, something. But I think that could be a place where we start.
I like that.
Yeah.
Somebody did, so I don't know who's reading the chat, but we have a call list was generated by a company. I believe it was everyone over 65. The robocalls were done by InFocus Campaigns, 2,562 calls, and the cost was $76.83.
Wow, that is super cheap.
Oh, Judy and I took the phone calls that resulted from this, and it was not a huge response.
Okay, so on the one hand, it's cheap and you don't have much to lose. On the other hand, it's not very effective. So.
Again, I think there's just something beside, like, that also was not in the middle of a global pandemic, so these people were not necessarily sheltered. Oh, it was?
It was.
Oh, it was. Okay. Thank you for the clarification. I'm like, early and mid-April.
So
I'll just read the chat.
So you're saying, so then that would be a good way of getting this out. But here again, we want to do things in an appropriate order, that we have the resources to offer the help first, and then offer the help. And we could do it with that and any other number of mediums. So.
Yep.
So I don't know how that satisfies this portion of adding this onto the agenda and talking about that, but if we could then, we know where we all want to go with it. We have our respective groups and connections that we have. Let's put the feelers out a little bit and maybe circle back at the next meeting and see where this is gone.
Can't take any action. Well, now I guess we can, but because
we have a quorum now.
We have a quorum now, so now Mike's here. We can actually make an action. But I don't know how to do that, so thank God Tim showed up as well.
Mike's got a big idea right now, and we're missing it because he's on mute.
I'm having a technological meltdown here. I literally have 3 Zoom calls a week, and for some reason I couldn't get signed on tonight.
No worries.
Just a meltdown. But I think the Interclub Council approach is probably a good avenue. I mean, you really have all of the community groups in one place. Now, I don't know if they're meeting in person or if they're meeting virtually or what the status is there. But you've got all of the civic groups in one spot.
That's true. I actually don't know how they're meeting in the pandemic, but I can find out.
You can make them meet, right, Melanie?
Say it again?
You can ask them to meet if they're not, right?
That's true.
Virtually.
You know
If that's
me.
the case, if they don't and they want to talk about it, include John and I if you could. We'd love to join in on
Okay,
the conversation.
yes.
So based on the calls that they did, they say most just want to chat with someone.
So that
Probably a lot of those people that just want to chat are on the interclub council anyway.
Okay.
It's tends to be a more mature audience. My kind of people.
It does make me question what we're focusing on, though. I mean, is what we really want is one of these groups to organize a phone tree that will be, you know, they can participate in, but if we create a phone tree, then it, you know, seniors can contact other seniors, and it becomes, there's more of a wave effect.
Mm-hmm. So you're saying there's like kind of two asks there. Would we have volunteers that would also be able to do the phone call?
Yeah, I mean, so do the phone calls, but also I think organize them, because I do think, I still think that calling even 2,500 people is that's a lot, even that number of phones. But like the phone trees, so we have them sometimes for school or for church. You have, so like if there's an emergency, you call one person and then they call the next person, and kind of getting that laid out. And if you can connect people, you know, plug people into that system, then the calls, everybody only has to make a couple calls, and then suddenly everyone's contacted.
Mm-hmm.
But that would be harnessing the seniors themselves to be making these calls, and presumably some wouldn't be interested in that at all, and some would. But that's what I'm saying. I think there's an organizational barrier here, and that's what I wonder if we should be asking these clubs for, is someone who feels like they can do that. I mean, for instance, like we've got one at our church. Maybe the person who organized that could help us figure out how to do it.
Yeah. So let's bring up those two asks then, we're saying, essentially, right? In our ask, yeah. Okay.
Crystal, you had something? I felt like your hand was raised before we move on.
Yeah, I was actually, before Commissioner Macy mentioned the phone tree, I was going to say that, you know, people just want to chat, as our commentators mentioned. I mean, even participating in a Zoom call would be a form of connection. And I guess thinking about all of this, it makes me wonder if we're really just making sure that, I mean, this is a resource, obviously, in the community, and it's, you know, our job to facilitate connections with the senior community, but what are the existing organizations like church or like clubs doing already to, you know, put that into effect? Because I think part of it is these individuals who are seeking connection, you know, there's an aspect of them reaching out too in their life, in their community. So
that's true.
I don't really know. That's just a comment. I don't know what we can do to encourage community groups that are existing with ties into the community, what they can do. Think about those things, but.
I mean, it's true, and that maybe would be a piece of this project, of the organization piece. Like if we see that there's 2,500 numbers to call, maybe we can, you know, ask a church if they can organize their members to make 200 of those calls, and then we can, you know, ask a Girl Scout troop if they can take over some of the grocery deliveries or something like that. Like I think we can do that. It's a big project. So, I mean, we don't have a volunteer coordinator in the city, even though I want one. And that's what we need, is someone to do that work.
All right. Anything else on that agenda item? No. Perfect. All right, moving on to 6C, which is the department reports. Start with Aaron or John, or
I'll let John take this one.
in tandem.
Yeah. Hold on, I gotta go back to my notes here. Okay. So first off, the senior center is partnering with Chicken Shack on Tuesday, October 20th. They're doing a pre-ordered curbside pickup meals between 11:45 and 12:45. p.m. So they'll have to call the senior center to place their pre-orders, and then we'll be out there pretty much doing some curbside delivery and handing out those people's meals who participate in that program. So be on the lookout for that on the Facebook page, newsletter, and other avenues that we post this stuff in.
AM or PM? AM or PM, John?
AM.
Oh, okay. I'm like, whew.
We gotta operate within park hours. So.
Okay, good. I was like, wow, those are some late seniors. They're getting their midnight snack on. Past my bedtime, so I would not be participating.
5 a.m. to 12:45 p.m.
Perfect. Thank you. I thought that's what you meant, but I just wanted to clarify.
Yeah, no problem. Because sometimes you gotta clarify, and there may be people showing up that late. Normandy Oaks, we're doing a sneak peek, and you guys have seen on the agenda for upcoming events on October 31st, as that Saturday. The sneak peek is going to be from 11 to 2 p.m. The first hour, 11 to 12, is going to be a media sneak peek, and then the 12 to 2 hours, they're going to be broken up into 2-hour increments, so 12 to 1 and then 1 to 2 are going to be open for the public to walk around Normandy Oaks and do a sneak peek preview as well. Those public hours you need to reserve, because we are limiting the amount of people per time block to 100. So to get your spot, make sure you make a reservation. We'll have the invitations out for that here shortly, probably within the next week or so. So keep an eye out for that as well if you guys are interested in doing a little sneak peek of the park. We'll be handing out, candy for the kids and whatnot. So a bunch of good stuff. And then on the recreation side of things, I'm getting ready to, and Paige and I are getting ready to hopefully open up our facilities after the holidays, providing some restrictions loosen up a little bit. We're putting out our winter insight that will be mailed out December timeframe, I believe. So if we did want to include any sort of senior outreach in that, let me know relatively sooner than later, so that way we can get that in the insight as well. But that's all I got for a recreation side. Aaron, I don't know if I missed anything, if you want to touch on some stuff.
No, I think we did it. The one item I was going to talk about was the Kim Gibbs Memorial at Barton, but Alan did a good job of that earlier today. That's covered our bases. Any questions for us?
I have a question. I know there's been some talk about since our last meeting. There's been some more talk about bees. Got any update on bees?
Yeah. So I reached out to a gentleman that was looking for a spot to relocate some hives, and his reaction was quite pleasing. He wasn't anticipating that quick of a response. So he's kind of in the process of getting these bees and these beehives together, so that way he can relocate them. So I think that is in the process as we speak. There are currently no bees or beehives we moved at this moment, but he knows he can contact me whenever he has them, and we will coordinate them to be moved at those 2 locations that we talked about.
John, Aaron, on the Normandy Oaks preview, do we as a board need to register as well, or are we invited for that first hour and
so that's a great question, and I don't want to exclude anybody here. So we have to necessarily limit it because Oakland County's involved in this, and so for that media preview, they've got a number of officials and dignitaries and media and everything else that will be there. So we have to limit it. And so yes, we do have representation on the board. So from here, you guys haven't received it yet, but it would be Melanie as a city commissioner, Mike as you were early on in the development of the park, Tim is chair, and Sarah also is a former chair on. We've included on the invite. From what's in this group. So did I mention you, Mike, as well? Yeah, I did.
Yeah, you did.
So that's the group. We necessarily need to limit it to that. And then for the public group, no. Once the registration's open and we've gone public with that, anybody else could sign on for that. I would say though, with being that you're board members, I know we did a walkthrough some time ago. But if you had interest during the course of a day, I know sometimes it's difficult. I would also be willing to work something out to kind of take you on a smaller, more personal tour, I guess, through the park. But either which way. Did I answer your question, or was that another part to it that I missed? Yeah. Okay.
Any other questions for John or Aaron? Sarah? No. Item number seven, which is items not on the agenda. Anybody have anything that up for discussion that we don't have listed on the agenda this evening?
Go ahead, Aaron.
Oh, I thought you were waving too. Okay. And I don't know. This occurred to me the other day when John and I were talking about when we had talked about the rental rates for the new pavilion at Normandy Oaks. Do you think the board would think it wise? And I don't know if we do that. We don't do this elsewhere. That we actually intentionally reserve at least once a week a block of time that's sort of prime time that we intentionally don't offer up for rental. Because it dawned on me, it's a public place, and really, if we book that solid, you could be somebody that would attend the park and not really have the right to go. I technically in the pavilion, right? And I think as a matter of fairness to the people that might not be able to, I think we should not just count on the fact that maybe not every day is going to be booked, but actually with intention not book some or some blocks of time. I don't know how what the sentiment is from the board on that. I think it's something we should consider. Not a lot, but just at least to say we can offer that. Where it's just. Yep.
Yeah, but do we do that? We don't do that any other parks. Star JC is probably our most popular. Correct me if I'm wrong. And we don't do that there.
Aaron, I think what you'll find is even though we are reserving 2 time blocks, I don't think we will hit all those time blocks. And even though our time blocks are 4 hours, you may have people only being there for an hour. In a lot of cases for our pavilions, we don't double book. So essentially you can be there from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. Majority of the people are not there from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. And so other people are using these pavilions simultaneously or the same days or whatnot.
I think it's a really interesting concept, and I'd love to see what the traffic flow looks like. Maybe like revisit it after maybe a month or two, like in the spring. Like clearly, I don't think winter's a good judge of like what that's going to look like. But maybe our first couple months, and if we just see it being booked back to back, then let's revisit it and think about that intention and what that impact is to the community. But I think, we'll see. I'm guessing it's going to be super popular, and it is probably going to be booked all the time because it's so amazing. But,
if that's the case for the little bit of revenue that you might take, I think it's our duty for a public space to offer some block of time that's just freely available. So yeah, it's a good course of action, I think.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I agree with the idea of doing this. My problem, I think Sarah's smart to think like, we could try it, but I'm also worried, like, don't we book them like many months in advance? So I don't know if we'd be able, like, we almost have to do the reservation first and then see if we can remove it. Like, we can remove the blocks after we put them in. Also, I mean, because they're 4-hour blocks, could we just like cut an hour off on like the back end of one and the front end of the other, and then people, they can come and they can stay longer if they want, or they can come set up a little bit earlier if they want, but they wouldn't be actually theirs for that time. And so kind of in the middle of the day, we would have some time that it would be open to the public.
That might also help from like, if you think about, let's fast forward, we hope we're not in the situation, but like the time that you're spent overlapping. I think right now with all of the things going on with COVID, we'd want to eliminate overlap between the two parties. So if you had an hour on each side, or at least 30 to 45
Well,
minutes.
there's already 1 hour between, I think.
Oh, it
Right.
is?
An hour in between, and I believe there's actually an hour between closing. Actually, there's 2 hours between closing and an hour between opening in the first slot.
What if we took another half hour? So then you have like 2 full hours between.
So you want 2 hours between the
Blocks. Like you get somebody gives up a half an hour and each, to Melanie's point, not a full hour, but a half an hour on each side.
Yep.
Or 15 minutes. I don't know.
The weekends are gonna book up fast because all of our pavilions weekends book up soon as we open the calendar up for reservations. You know, June, July's, May's are booked.
That's why maybe it doesn't need to be always like a same amount of time each day. I mean, that's one idea. I was just suggesting even having one or two days, even during the course of a week.
Yeah, so the weekdays will probably be more availability, I would imagine. The one thing that I would be hesitant would be to change the times throughout the season. It's got to be consistent. Either you're going 3.5 hours throughout the season, and these are the times where there's a lapse. But I would hesitate saying all right, beginning of the season there's going to be a 2-hour lapse, and then towards the end of the season it's going to be a 3-hour lapse, and just make it consistent.
Yeah, I would say that you do it 1 year and then you learn, and then you change it for the following year, I guess. Like, to your point, John.
From what I understood, which I think was maybe your intention, was there would, as an example, they would never be booked on a Monday afternoon. And it would never be booked on a Tuesday morning or something of that schedule. So those times were always consistently open. Was that your intention?
You're on mute, Aaron.
Yeah, that was my intention. Because even if we just ride on the assumption that during the week there's not a lot of business there, there'll be free space available. Maybe it will never ever be an issue, but we could as policy set one block of time during the week if that's what's preferred or whatever, that we can say we guarantee that as public access to anybody, that you can't book that time, and absolutely anybody can do it. That's sort of the intention, just the rough idea, and maybe there isn't a ton of wisdom to it or how it would be implemented. I don't know. Just generally the philosophy of having publicly funded amenity publicly available for at least this time.
Yeah.
I think we could do that.
I feel like oh, sorry, Sarah, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I feel like the extreme version of this would be like maybe for the first 3 months of operation, we don't let them book on Saturdays. So like, hey, no too much, but like
maybe Sunday morning.
You guys paid for this, and here it finally is. Like, So I guess I'm as you say that, I'm leaning more towards having one of the blocks be a weekend block, and maybe, as Sarah just said, Sunday mornings would be better. Then I can tell you're anxious when I said all day Saturday. But I do like the idea of like bringing people in, and and maybe it's this year we do it just to give people, because they've been waiting for so long, kind of like the gift to the public of like, we're kind of like we don't pay for parking right now, right? Like it's 2 hours free of parking. This is kind of your Normandy Oaks gift on Sunday mornings. It's free and available to people. I don't know.
We're really only talking about the pavilion, right? I mean, we're not talking about the whole park. So everybody can come and go in the park at any time.
Absolutely.
During park hours, but I think Sunday morning is probably a lesser demanded time. If you're going to reserve something on a weekend day, and then weekdays, John, we'd have to rely on what the history has been with the other parks and see if there's some time in there that is generally not popular, and that can block that out for future use. And then let's face it, folks. Based on recent developments, who the heck knows what's going on with COVID? And we could be sitting here next May and still dealing with this, and there won't be a lot of rental.
Right.
Who knows?
And I think there's a good possibility, like I said before, to John's point, this may be just a complete non-issue because nobody in the public has access, or feels like they are completely shut out from use of that pavilion, and because it's not rented out to that extent. In which case, it's not an issue. But I think as a matter of policy, it doesn't hurt to actually say that that's our policy. We do that for that purpose. Just throwing that out there. I didn't mean to prolong any of this, but I think it's an important consideration.
If we make that recommendation from the board, does that have to go to the city commission?
No, that would. I don't believe so. No.
I would hold off on making that recommendation. I would like to see how the pavilion rental goes when we open it up in the spring. Because right now you'd be making a recommendation on a blind.
John, I understand there's that possibility. If we're looking at it, we're looking to see if there's any time, if this is even a problem that we have. There's a good chance, I bet money that it's not, because during the week, there's going to be a lot of time when it's not used. I'm just saying as a matter of policy, to say that we made this consideration, we actually dedicated it. Maybe it's not the best idea, I don't know. But I think that's taking it the step beyond saying that we're taking advantage of the fact that there's going to be time available and making time available, just in case. I don't know. It doesn't have to be a lot. But John, I agree with you as well that, no, I don't think, my purpose of bringing it up today wasn't to make a motion on it or make a recommendation. John and I had talked about it, and I kind of sprung it on John, so I apologize for this tonight, but it occurred to me. I wanted to get it out there and talk about it. We definitely have some time. Park's not opening imminently, or be renting that out, so maybe at our next time we can have a little bit more of a conversation about it too, or not. I don't know, but no, I don't think we need action time.
Yeah, I think you're probably looking at making a decision on it the first of the year. I mean, realistically, because that's when you're start looking out towards spring by then.
Mm-hmm. And I think it really would be relatively inconsequential. So even if we did decide on it, and it might, it's more of a measure, I guess, to say we did. Melanie, I'm sorry.
No, I
Crystal
just
had
was
something.
going to say.
Sorry.
Oh, go
Sorry.
ahead.
I think Crystal had something. She had her hand sort of raised. I wasn't sure.
Yeah, no, I love the idea. What you're trying to consider, Erin, is the fact that this might end up being like a two-tier park system where we have like a new park where people not only pay taxes, but they also pay an additional fee to use this public park. And then you have everybody else who has to grill in their backyard or whatever the case may be, or go to their second park. So I completely understand that sentiment. I think we're in a good place to be having this discussion. And I also agree with what Sarah and John were saying, which is I think that we were saying there, which is to wait and see the first year. And so I think all of these are good considerations. And I think that there's no right answer. It's a matter of preference. And whoever's running this probably should have some pull as to what they want to do so they facilitate this reservation or abiding by this policy where they're setting aside time where people can't use the park. I would say that in terms of marketing a new facility, it would be, I don't know if this is possible at all, but even to send up feelers to the communities who would be on the board to see what they think the policy should be, because that brings attention to the fact that we're having this party and new facility. And then two, the idea of a gift to the community by having it free a certain day this first year, that's also a way to market it too. But obviously it would be at the expense of all the bookings that you have when the park is most new.
We had to keep in mind too that there's a pavilion there, and there's gonna be about 11
shade sales.
Well, they're called carousel tables, but they're like coffee tables. They're gonna be in the splash pad. So there's gonna be a lot of seating going on, and through the times that people reserve it may not use the total reserved block of space. I think there's going to be a lot of downtime at the pavilion. But My personal recommendation would be, let's just hold off. We don't open up our pavilion registrations until March. And that's for residents. Then April, we do it for non-residents. So we really need just to see how things go before we even move forward, maybe this idea or not, you know.
Yeah, no action tonight in any case. I wasn't suggesting that, so we'll.
I think it's a great idea. Good
Okay.
discussion. Good discussion.
Melanie was raising her hand there.
So I think it's a good idea too, and I am, as I said already, I'm hesitant to wait until people start booking, because I don't think you can't roll it back. Once people start booking, you can't suddenly say, oh, by the way, all Mondays are available to the public. So I guess I would ask if we could revisit this in the January meeting, the January agenda, and with some proposed days. So like, you know, we're throwing out some random days today. Apparently Saturday's a no, but like maybe, you know, Monday, Sunday morning, Wednesday, like bring some proposals back, and hopefully we'll have more full board at that point, and we can have a discussion about these options and see if we want to move on it then.
I agree.
Anyone have any items not on the agenda they would like discussion on tonight?
Aaron, it wouldn't be a meeting without talking about the dog park. Can you please provide us an update on the fob, as well as, I think you had ordered some seating or some benches. I thought there was a dog bone involved. I don't know.
I think one of the dogs over at the place like found it and buried it somewhere.
Oh, he did. They do like to dig.
It is ordered. We have some cool furniture coming for that. It's a big stone bone that I guess if I were a dog, I would love to just climb on and, you know, it looks like a lot of fun. So they call it a doggy bench because they hop up on it, lay on it, sprawl, do whatever they do.
They hop up on the picnic table, so they're going to love a dog bone.
Yes. Hopefully they prefer the dog bone over the picnic.
Yes, that would be amazing.
So that's coming, and then also one bench.
Okay. Do you have an ETA at all?
Big dog bone on it. What's that?
Do you have an ETA at all? Or are they in?
Yeah, it should have been already. So there was
Okay.
They called them. In fact, I talked to Ann Carlini, who I've been working with on this.
Okay, good.
Last week, and said, "Have you heard anything?" And they haven't. So I'm still waiting to hear back from them. I suspect it would be quick.
Okay.
So I would say the next few weeks.
Good. And of course, the key fob. The source is where I'm concerned with the fob, and I think I expressed it in my email to you guys. The fob is not working, so there's an alternative. It's not that we can't use the park, but we have to keep a gate open, which I think has probably invited a few non-members. And I also know the city is not renewing fobs until this. Parents. So there's been a lot of our members that haven't been able to renew. So just wanted to make sure I know that you're still working towards it, but I just want to give this group an update.
Yeah, it's actually an IT issue, and they had to order a controller for that system there. And as you know from your experience, it's been a problem numerous times before. So this solution is a better solution than the sort of repairs that were made before, and we're hopeful that it's a longer term solution that it lasts longer. So I apologize for the delay, but they did get on it right away. It's a specialty computer controller component. And the last update we got was that it should have been in by the end of this week. I heard that late last week. And then it would be maybe about a week to install, to actually be able to get it, the relevant people involved to install it.
Okay.
So we're looking at about a week, I would guess, from where we're at now. But yeah, it was largely ordering that part.
Great.
So.
Thank you for the update.
Appreciate it.
I'm just waiting for some kind of unfortunate.
You got out of the park that night.
So am I, because I'd be really hungry by now, because that was like a month and a half ago. Thank you for the update. I appreciate it.
Yep.
Okay, I have two items not on the agenda that I think we need direction on, or discussion, or just direction. How do we go about having a empty position filled on this board? Do we notify? Or
Those in front of the boards and committee, I've already notified them.
They know.
So
Yeah, they know. We just haven't met.
Okay, perfect.
The same problem we have with getting this meeting scheduled is that it's hard. This meeting's scheduled all the time, and so
How many positions do we have?
Yeah, I don't have that roster.
Well,
Are coming due, you mean?
we may have more that I would check with the roster and attendance, so.
Okay. Okay.
That's another thing I want to discuss. Would we could we propose for our committee alone or something through the clerk's office to suspend those attendance requirements during this pandemic time? I mean, granted, we did not meet for a very long time, but I think with the fluidity of the meeting schedule, and it's the first Thursday, it's the third Thursday at 6 o'clock, at 7 o'clock, I think that lends for a lot of confusion, and maybe the meeting schedule doesn't fit into someone's schedule properly, as it did when we're a consistent time of month. And you see what I'm saying? Or am I just?
I understand.
I do. And I mean, the appointments committee, like, if you are removed from a board for lack of attendance, you can appeal, and the appointments committee can take your reasons into consideration. But if someone is not able to attend for a long period of time over, even during the pandemic over Zoom, it's possible that they are ready to let it go, or that someone who is able to be more active in the board would be a more appropriate person to be on the board at this time, and then that person can rejoin at a later time. So we certainly don't want anyone who's lacking access to not be able to be on the board if that's the reason. But if it's a time reason, then it's possible it's better for both sides if it's not, if we find someone else. So yeah, I think it's worth talking about. I don't know if changing the rules is necessary, because there's already an allowance for this. You already can appeal your case if you're going to get removed.
So it says, okay, so items, so somebody not on the agenda wrote, it is an ordinance, so it would require an ordinance change.
So that would be really hard. So like I said.
So I think we stick with the appeal process. How's that, Tim?
Perfect.
I agree with you, Tim, that like we need to have these meetings that I get a quorum. Like, it's a challenge that we're missing so many members most of the time.
Make me feel bad, Mel.
Like I tell you, I felt bad. I was like 5 minutes late. Your tardiness made me feel much better about it.
Let's be clear, Mike. His 5 minutes was the longest 5 minutes of the board history of me trying to figure out what the Roberts rules were on the internet. So
I will say I was a little delayed in getting the agenda out because this whole Supreme Court thing kind of threw a wrench into whether or not we would need to have met in person or not. So I was waiting on a decision from that standpoint.
I guess I should have said that in the commissioner comments. I don't know if anybody's even aware that this is happening. If you weren't getting the emails from Dave Gillum, but it wasn't clear that it was after the governor's orders were struck down that it was legal for boards to be meeting remotely like this, because that's not foreseen in the law. And so they just had this whole process trying to get it passed so that we could continue to meet remotely, and it just got passed. So there was a open question, as John said, whether or not any of these boards and committees, including the city commission, would be able to continue to meet remotely. But good news, we can.
Thank you. What else?
Have any items not on the agenda for discussion this evening? Going to item 8, which we've discussed, which brings us to.
I do have a question, just a general question. What are we doing about trick or treating in the city? I guess
nothing. It's like
nothing.
individual. The city isn't putting out any rules at all. I mean, I guess this could change tomorrow, but I've heard nothing.
Okay. So we're not doing a downtown thing in that we usually have no downtown thing. If you want to participate as a homeowner, you can.
Right. There's no rules in place other than the general health rules. But remember that we're having the Normandy Oaks thing on Halloween.
I know.
It's in the middle of the day, and there will be candy.
Do we have to dress up?
Wear your mask.
Got it.
Yes.
I don't believe you, John.
They're wearing masks.
I don't trust you, John.
I will if you will, Sarah.
I'll wear something.
We're doing in our real estate office. We're having a decorate your mask thing for Halloween week. So just be something to have fun with.
In our neighborhood. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were.
No, go ahead. No, go ahead.
We're doing like a contest where all the neighbors are gonna, the challenge is to put on a scene, some sort of scene with straw people.
Oh wow. Oh wow.
So
Sounds like a fire,
and
that
so
sounds like
we're
a
gonna,
fire
like,
hazard.
building these whole sets in their garages, and then like late at night, the night before Halloween, everyone's gonna go out and set these up, and then the kids are gonna be able to go down and vote and do stuff. Should be fun. It was my idea, and I thought it might be a good idea. I'm like, I don't know. My wife took it and ran with it, and the neighbors loved it.
That's
so.
awesome. That's awesome. All right. I don't want to derail this any longer. I just thought I'd ask.
Yeah.
I'm like item agenda number 9, which is our adjournment.
I make a motion to adjourn.
We have a motion by Ms. Kinninger, a second by Commissioner Macy. Or yes.
I actually have
Yes.
I actually have discussion though. Are we meeting again next month?
I can get with our staff and figure out when the next meeting would be for November.
The meeting schedule is not set for November yet. And don't forget, we have a holiday thrown in there. So, and we also have election thrown in there. So I probably won't be available the first week in November. And then we have Thanksgiving on the Friday off as well. So it's going to be kind of tough.
All right, maybe we'll talk offline, Carol, and see if there's a time that's better for all of our staff, and we can circle back with the group.
It seems Sunday mornings are not taken anywhere.
We can use the pavilion.
We can use the pavilion.
We can use the pavilion at Normandy Oaks because it'll be available to the public.
Bring your lawn chair.
Exactly.
I did half of tonight's meeting at Exchange Park, so you know, could work.
Until it got too dark. So we have a
Practice
motion.
was over.
Ms. Kinninger, and I believe the second was from Mr. Lipinski. Go ahead and take a roll call as I see everybody on my screen. In favor, aye. If you are opposed, vote by saying no. Ms. Kinninger?
Aye. Aye.
Ms. Chow?
Aye. Aye.
Commissioner Macy?
Aye. Aye.
Mr. Rapinski?
Aye.
And I vote aye. We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Tim, can we have a remediation, like Robert's Rules session sometime so I know what to do next time?
You were fine.
And once again, I apologize for being
No worries.
a party soul.
Thank you for coming, Mike.
Thank you for. I'll follow up with you offline, Tim, about
Thanks,
my Robert's
Carol.
Rules.
Thank you.
Perfect. You guys have a good night. Thank
You too. Bye.